The following program is intended for mature audiences.
Gore readings, Flesh Wound After Dark fans.
Dan, I hate to do it. I'm going to make you do the restart. It's going to bother me. It's going to bother other people. We're not in the right spots.
Oh, okay.
So that's fine. I'm just going to do the little gimmick and then just go right in. Sorry about that, guys. All right. Dan, here we go.
Gore readings, Flesh Wound After Dark fans, and welcome to Flesh Wound After Dark. We're continuing our Black Emanuelle series. I am Flesh Wound Dan, joined by producer Todd.
Good evening.
And back once again, our special guest, Max Ammo. Max, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing absolutely fantastic. It's a pleasure to be back. I'm particularly excited for tonight's episode because it's a double bill of Bruno Mattei movies, and I am probably one of the greatest Bruno Mattei fans in the world. So
awesome.
Yeah,
yes.
Very excited.
One of the Italian legends that kind of kept going even past the decline in Italian exploitation.
Well, I think he was the king of the exploitation trash movie because he really did just do the exploitation movies, and he was the king of the trash movie as far as I'm concerned, Joe D'Amato is also a contender, but because he actually made a couple of good movies as well, which Bruno Mattei never did. So I feel like Joe D'Amato deserves to be a little different. Bruno Mattei, he's just a down and dirty, just let's use the script from Alien, even though everyone's in a minibus.
He knew what he was doing. Joe was trying to make some art in his stuff, even if it didn't always work.
Yeah,
Joe had his death smiles on a murderer, and
and Beyond the Darkness as well, which is fucking fantastic.
Yeah, we'll talk about that.
That Tough to Kill is actually a pretty good grindy African kind of merc thing as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Tonight, actually, the two films we're talking about, I think, are probably some of the more seen out of these films. They've had more releases, I think.
Oh, yeah.
So I think a lot of people are a little more familiar.
I can tell you it was Women's Prison Massacre that introduced me to Emanuelle. I didn't know who she was. I watched it as a Bruno Mattei movie. I was working my way through Bruno Mattei movies, and I was like, oh, wow, this is awesome. And she's called Emanuelle. That stuck in my head. And then I saw Emanuelle with Last Cannibal, and I realized, wow, it's a continuity. This actress. And then I was trapped, sucked in, by Laura Gamsner, the Laura Gamsner rabbit hole.
Absolutely. And the two films tonight were actually shot back to back. They have kind of a complicated history that we'll get into, but technically the first one, even though they were shot back to back, that we're doing tonight is Violence in a Women's Prison from 1982. And this, of course, is directed by Bruno Mattei. And it follows photojournalist Emanuelle, who goes undercover into a women's prison where she discovers and experiences the abuse, torture, and humiliation the inmates are subjected to. Pretty typical women in prison storyline for the most part on this one. I will say one thing about Violence in a Women's Prison. I think Emanuelle suffers a lot more in this than most of the other films. Even there's more graphic Emanuelle film. Yes,
it is unpleasant.
Yes, she gets the scene has some humor to it because she's getting eaten by these rats, yet she doesn't really try and get up, run, flip, knock them off. It's a brutal scene. And there's a pretty, I don't know what they did to the rats, but they've got these red eyes that are quite disconcerting if you're afraid of rats. And in this one, Gabrielle Tinty, of course, her husband, he is the doctor who's got his own sort of story going. He killed his wife, but for humanitarian purposes, I guess, in this particular case. We do get, as I think Riscout is how you say her name, Franca Stoppi as the villain, one of the villains, I should say, in this film. And she was, she's quite the villain. She's quite the nasty human being. And this one's ugly. It's funny because we'll contrast the two films. It's very
yeah.
Very different tones.
That's
This is
something I wanted to talk about for sure, because I kind of touched on before. I personally noticed Bruno Mattei had this habit of shooting movies in twos. Shooting two on the same topic. Like, he did Strike Commando and Robo War, both with it's slipping my mind now. Who's Strike Commando? Who plays Strike Commando?
Strike Commando was Reb Brown, I believe.
Yes, of course, Reb Brown.
Yeah.
And then he did two movies with Brent Huff. He did two movies about nuns. One, and he used to, I feel when he did the two movies, he'd do one which was a little more of a straight movie and one which was more out there, because he did the True Story of a Nun of Monza, which he shot back to back with The Other Hell.
Yeah.
If you remember that one. And his first movie was SS Girls, which is very campy, kind of salon kitty type of thing. And then he shot the Women's Camp with the same cast, the Women's Camp #1, which was really quite grinding, actually. For Bruno Mattei, it's actually quite unpleasant,
Yes,
I love that about him, the way he does these double movies,
Yeah, no, it was a great way to, that's why a guy like Bruno Mattei worked so long, because, you got these sets, let's just shoot two movies.
He was making content before it was popular to make content. I mean,
yeah, exactly.
He was.
I love the way Gabriel Tinty switches the roles in both movies. He plays the opposite part in the next movie. The next, as we're about to talk about, is
which is not easy, because they were shooting like in the same sets, so they're running all over the place. Interestingly enough, Women's Prison Massacre, at least according to Laura Gemser and Claudio Fragasso himself, was essentially directed by Claudio Fragasso.
Claudio Fragasso, I heard, right, I don't know if you guys have seen this movie. I really want to see it. I heard he made a movie about 10 years ago, a kind of Euro gangster movie about something about a trip to Naples or something. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about. And it actually got good reviews, like people who didn't know who Claudio Fragasso was. This movie is like a low-level gangster movie, which he wrote, and it got some awards. I really want to see this movie. I forgot my name right now. It's very hard to find.
Yeah, I'll have to look into it. He and Rosella they're still very active.
Yeah, Rosella was involved too. They were both involved. It was like a low budget gangster movie, but it actually got like real decent reviews.
Yeah. We'll have to look into that. So I think one thing that sets this movie apart is Franca Stoppi, who is just such a good villain. She just had one of those faces to play these roles, and she was, of course, known for probably more than anything Beyond the Darkness, the Joe D'Amato film, in the evil governess role. Yeah, she was Iris was the character name.
Yes, Iris.
Yeah, so she's just as good in this. She's just somebody that you don't get a character actor like that often anymore. Just she had the perfect face to play.
I love her. I've seen her. Everything she's in, she's fucking great. She just she just embraces what her. hard face, and the fact she has that the scene when she's eating in Beyond the Darkness and she's just mushing the food and eating disgustingly. It's such a macabre scene, you know.
It is, and she was a really sweet lady because the rats in the film she actually like let go and pissed off Bruno Mattei because she thought they were be happier released
They
into
probably
the wild.
were.
And yeah, and of course there's the what's her name from Cannibal Ferox as well.
Yeah. This has a really good cast. Ursula Flores is Consuelo. Maria Romano is Kitty, and of course
She's
the great.
also in that Wild Beasts movie, which reminded me. I still think we've got to do that with Kruger. Make Kruger watch Wild Beasts.
Yeah.
He won't have seen anything like that before. You know?
Yeah, Wild Beast is a blast.
It's insane. So the bit with the children and the polar bear, and it's just a real polar bear, and they're kind of throwing children in it. It's amazing.
Safety was not a concern on a
It really wasn't. No, at all.
Italian movie set at the time.
Yeah.
And violence in a women's prison, certainly for the sleaze lovers, has a lot going for it. Very of its time, the gay inmate, because there's a men's prison, of course, right next to the women's prison, which doesn't seem like a great idea, but that character may be offensive to a lot of people now, but pretty amusing stuff goes down, how he kind of figures into the as expected prison riot that happens towards the end of the film. Minor spoiler alert there. You can't really spoil these movies. And yeah, this one's just nasty, grimy. This is everything you would expect from a Bruno Mattei movie. And Emanuelle suffers in this one. There's a lot of bad things that happen. She gets eaten by rats, put in a sort of Bell torture device, all sorts of unpleasant, the assaults that you would come to expect from these films. And that's not to say that there's not a lot of humor. I think these two movies, I think they're good entry points for some people that might want some of the laughs, unintentional or otherwise, that many of these movies have, and we'll get into the next one. But there are some funny moments where the guard just gets pissed after she has an orgasm and just starts beating these two poor ladies. There's a lot of moments like that. It's very entertaining sleaze, and it checks all the boxes, I think.
Oh yes, I agree with that.
Yeah.
What do you guys think?
Violence in a Women's Prison, out of the Emanuelle women in prison movies, was definitely my first one of them. Well, there's and it's honestly probably one of my earlier women in prison movies too. That I'm thinking about it. I think Linda Blair, Chained Heat, but yeah, this is the stuff we love. It's all the sleaze, all of the exploitation, the violence, the nudity. It's why we watch movies, really. I mean, it gives us everything we want.
Yeah, great villain too, which always sets it apart. You don't always get a great villain in women in prison films. Sometimes it's just, you can tell they're phoning it in. Franca Stoppi, she really goes for it. I mean, she was a theater actress, very prolific and talented, but
a lot of times they just go for like the Ilsa clone, and it doesn't feel like that in this one. It's like she's like doing her thing, which I like.
It is, and it's funny because even mainstream stuff kind of borrows some of the tropes from these movies. The older inmate with the pet cockroach, that's been done before. I think in Orange is the New Black.
I mean, the most mainstream women in prison movie that I remember was the one, what's his name? Jonathan Demme did. Remember that one? Caged Heat?
Caged, yeah.
Caged Demme one. That was, I mean, that was almost that. What it was, it was a proper budget movie. Like,
yeah, no,
I enjoyed that too. I enjoyed that Caged Heat.
Yeah, Caged Heat's amazing. I mean, even if you go into like the World War II exploitation stuff. Like, Salon Kitty had a big budget for the time. So they all usually had their big budget counterparts, but there's something about a cheap, grimy Italian women in prison film, and this definitely delivers. I think everything you could possibly want. So some of the extras, I will say, which we'll get into, they bleed together a little bit. There's some extras for the other movie on the other disc, so might be jumping around a little bit on that. But we'll try and tackle all the extras together at the end after we're done both movies. But so this one ranks high for you guys in the Black Emanuelle series.
For me, yes. It's one of those though that like it doesn't really feel like it feels like a name only Emanuelle. Like they're just it doesn't feel like part of the continuity because like we don't really know why or how she's like, it doesn't make and she's not a photographer, or is this the one she's not a photographer? I don't know. These two, they kind of get mixed up a little.
She's not trying. I mean, seduction is not like her main thing in this one.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like Emanuelle. It feels like a Laura Gemser movie, obviously. But that's always been my own thing, because aren't even in some dubbings her name isn't Emanuelle, or is that on the Women's Prison Massacre?
Even somebody who has watched all of these movies, that gets hard to keep track of.
One of these, I know, one of the dubs, her name is not Emanuelle. I know on one of these.
Her name's Emanuelle in both movies.
No, I get that, but like not in all of the translations. Like
right. Quite possibly,
But so, I mean, I love this as a women in prison movie. As a Black Emanuelle movie, it's lower in my rankings just because it's not what I want it's what I want out of exploitation sleaze. It gives me everything I want, but that's not like what I'm going, like the Black Emanuelle. I kind of want that world traveler feel. So this one's different. Both of these are different. They've always kind of felt out of the continuity for me.
I get that. I will say, and I'm sure you guys have watched all these reviews, continuity is not a big thing with these films. Some can kind of connect in your head better than others, but there's certainly
it doesn't help you have like the same actor, like she falls in love with in every movie.
For me, because it was the first Emanuelle film I saw, the continuity, that's
your introduction, right?
That's so but I have to say, right, because I personally think one of these two movies is a much better movie than the other one. So my score, without giving too much away, but my score for the first one is lower. If it existed on its own, it would probably be higher, but it's just that I happen to think that Women's Prison Massacre it's just got a shitload more. It looks like a big budget movie. It's got the action in, some people getting fucked up with shotguns, and just generally like more a bit more oomph to it, Yeah, it looks absolutely. It looks like it had a bit of a bigger budget, because it has like some driving bits outside the prison and a few bits that the first one doesn't. I felt like it looked like a little bit more expensive movie.
Yeah, very impressive shooting two very different movies at the same time.
I love Gabriel Tinti in the second one is so fucking evil,
Yeah, well, before we get into Women's Prison Massacre, what do we rate?
Sorry.
Oh no, that's cool. What do we rate violence in a women's prison?
Out of 5?
Yeah.
3 and 3.75.
Okay, almost a 4. Okay,
almost 4.
I'm a 4. I'm not even holding back. I'm a 4 out of 5 on this one. I do like this lease.
I'm a 4
I'll give it a 5. No, I'll give it a 5. I mean a 4. Sorry, too. I'll give it a 4.
Yeah, that's cool. 4. It delivers everything you could want. But now let's move on to the second film. Also technically from director Bruno Mattei, although it is said by Laura Gemser and Claudio Fragasso himself that he mostly directed this one.
Don't poltergeist him. Leave him.
Well, it's out there, but I think they both probably were just going back and forth. You need two directors. One director can't handle two movies back to back.
Right.
And not even back to back. Movies are shot back to back. These were shot at the exact same time. Yeah. So that's impressive.
Yeah. How do you keep track? Like, what scene am I doing now? Which movie are we in?
Yeah, that's next level stuff. And these were real movies. So Women's Prison Massacre from 1983 follows 4 escaped male convicts who seize control of a women's prison and proceed to terrorize the inmates, one of whom is reporter Emanuelle, who is incarcerated on trumped-up charges by a corrupt DA. So, Max, your favorite, what did you think of Women's Prison Massacre, and how'd you find it in the first viewing?
I saw it first through Bruno Mattei, through working my way through Bruno Mattei's filmography. So I didn't even know that Black Emanuelle was a character in other movies, for a while. In fact, till I got to the Emanuelle and the Cannibals. I really enjoyed it. I liked the bit at the beginning when they've got the makeup on and they're doing a kind of little avant-garde play at the beginning, and they make an effort to do some interesting shots with the lighting and stuff. I feel it looks much better than the other movie, and it also has the stuff outside with the car chases, with the bad guys, and it actually has, for Bruno Mattei, because normally he's just too comical to be disturbing, it actually has some pretty nasty moments in, like when he cuts to the chick from Beyond the Darkness' throat with the razor in his mouth. I mean, that's nasty. It's hardcore,
Yeah.
And so what was the other bit, which was when Albina's playing the Russian roulette and she blows her brains out and the brains land in Gabriel Tinty's mouth. They literally throw the brains into his mouth like a dollop of brain. I mean, that scene is stiff,
Yeah.
Hardcore. I mean, it really turns it up. I just think it's a great movie, really great for a woman in prison exploitation movie. It really turns it up and brings what I would expect from Bruno Mattei and Fregosi.
Yeah, and we get Carlo DeMeo of Gates of Hell, City of the Living Dead fame as the lawman in this one.
Yes,
as
of course.
well.
Yeah.
He's a lot of fun playing opposite Gabriel Tinty's villain, who looks like Gabriel Tinty looks like he's having a lot of fun in this one. He has played.
That's what I enjoyed about that. I think he looks having more fun than he does as the Doctor in the first movie. It's more fun character, isn't it? Like psychotic bank robber. I mean, he's like got a lot more fun.
Yes, and he plays Crazy Boy, I think was his character name.
Crazy Boy.
Yeah. Everybody, I mean, the acting in this, and of course, again, it's they're dubbed, which adds to some of the comedic value. But Ursula Flores as Albina, I mean, just the expressions on her face, and this movie's just a lot of fun at the same time. I recommend this one to a lot of people who aren't necessarily women in prison fans, because I think there's a lot of entertainment value even beyond that, the staples of the subgenre. I think we even get an over-the-top style arm wrestling scene with Emanuelle and Albina in this one. It feels like a Canon film at times. It really does. And this one's just got so much going on. It's a siege film. It's not just a women in prison film. You mentioned the opening avant-garde sort of performance at the jail, and you're sitting, you're watching it for the first time, like, what the fuck is this? Is this an Emanuelle movie? What's going on?
Stuff like that, like in the the true story of a nun of Monza. Bruno Mattei tries like a few artistic little bits and that.
Yeah,
that movie actually is quite. Have you seen that movie?
Oh,
True story of the nun of Monza. It's a pretty reasonable like for Bruno Mattei standards, I would say that was one of his more acceptable films.
Yeah, we did an unsploitation show about a year ago, I think.
Maybe a little sooner than that, but yeah, we sat on
yeah.
it for a while.
Yeah.
There's just too
And
many. Every time I think about doing that, there's just so many great. Like I love Flavia the Heretic and Alucarda, and that's one of my favorites.
Yeah, and this one too, we have to mention Pierangelo Pizzato as Helmut von Bauer. I think he was a lot of fun to watch. Just everybody looked like they were having a good time. This is a very over the top movie, and it works for it. It always did stand out. I know Scream Factory put this on Blu-ray, so it's one of those ones I think people are a little more familiar with than a lot of the other ones. And it's a good entry point. You may have seen it under the Emanuelle in Prison title, which is actually the title on this box set. Blade Violent is the other alternate title for this. It's hard to keep them clear in your head sometimes, but
I think people will be surprised when we get to some of the later titles like the Black Cobra Woman stuff, because there's some good stuff in those, like some really good some really good actual cinematography and story, and there's
It's interesting because these movies start and they have a very 70s feel, but the Black Emanuelle series just kept going. So the tone does change quite a bit into the 80s.
It's
You know,
fascinating.
Yeah, they had legs. Just Cinemax, HBO back in the day. I mean, these movies just felt like they built those channels practically. That's why we all subscribe.
Yeah, they did.
And you can feel Rosella Drudy's writing in Women's Prison Massacre. I think it really comes across. It's not the most sadistic film. If anybody, I mean, it's there, but it's a different kind of sadistic. So I think a lot of maybe sleazy is more the word I would go with. It's a little less sleazy than some of the others, but nonetheless extremely entertaining. And you do get the action bits at the end, the siege of the prison and everything. This is just a fun one. So if you're watching these and you're like, I don't know how I feel about women in prison, but I'd like to try one of them, Women's Prison Massacre is a good jumping in point, I think.
It is a good jumping in point.
Yeah. Todd, where does this rank for you?
I really like this one. I always have it. Like you said, it's part siege movie, part this. It's like everything that I like about the last one is like not here, but it's like it's still just as entertaining, if not more. I do like the other one feels like we're making a women in prison movie. There we go. This one feels like, well, we're kind of, but we're just gonna have some Bruno Mattei fun, and here we go.
Mouth for the brains.
Yeah,
that's pretty gross.
So like, it's like one like feels like a traditional woman in prison movie, and one feels like a Bruno Mattei woman in prison movie, and that's what makes it so much fun.
Did you laugh when I think it was Helmut popped Irene's blow up doll that she was keeping in her cell? that was pretty funny. This one's just a really good time. I highly recommend it. And
and I'm trying to think of anything else on this one. It is just such a fun film. I mean, well, our kind of fun at least.
Yes.
Definitely one you may not want to watch with the little ones, but that's the whole series.
No. It's actually funny too, because you'll notice a lot of French credits on this, depending on what version you had, and that's because it was actually financed by a French lingerie company. So they had some of these they had to make like, well, we need to make it look like a French film for this audience, and, but we got to make it look American for this, and a lot of funny production stories with these movies. So what do we rate this one? And then we'll talk about the extras, which, as always, are extensive.
It's one of those where it's like, for me, it's not, again, it goes back to the whole the Black Man. It feels so different, but as a movie on its own, it's a 5 for me. I love this one.
I give it a 5. Yeah, it brought me, it hooked me into the series, hooked me into this character, so it's going to have a 5.
Yeah, I'll give it a 5 as well. I think this movie's a blast. All right, so now we'll talk about the extras, which are spread out across both discs. So I'm sure I'm going to have something.
One disc, Dan.
It was one disc spread out across the 2 movies on
there
one
you
disc.
go.
There you go.
I was like, did we do? Yeah. But they did. It's hard to keep track because they do jump back on the extras on both of them.
Yes.
So,
so we do get a commentary for Women's Prison Massacre from author, critic Annie Choi of Bleeding Skull and film editor Perry Pivovar of Requiem for a Dream fame. They got her on this. They talk a little bit about they compare the tones in Violence in a Women's Prison and Women's Prison Massacre, and the partnership of Claudio Fragasso and Bruno Mattei, which went through several films, and how difficult it had to be for the same actors and crew to sort of just keep these 2 movies straight, because you're shooting one minute and shooting a scene for the other the next. It had to be tough. A lot of good information in this. You could tell the 2 ladies love these movies, and it's a good listen for sure. We also get Jailhouse Rock, an interview with composer Luigi Ceccarelli that runs 39 minutes, so it's a good piece, and talks about some of his early work and his early working relationship with Claudio Fragasso and how it evolved into bigger projects. Really good piece, 39 minutes. We also get Razorblade Smile, an interview with actor Pietro Angelo Pizzato, who played Helmet in Women's Prison Massacre. He's also just a blast in the movie. He talks a little bit about the criticism about him overacting in the film, but I think that absolutely works for the tone. It really does. A lot of memorable villains in that movie. He taught one interesting story he had was he was going to play Rasputin in a canceled film. So it's kind of a career piece, and he kind of goes over different things that he did working with the recently passed Carlo Di Meo, and he also some cool insights on the different personalities of Bruno Mattei and Claudio Fragasso, who, again, you're dealing with both of them at different times. So that runs 14 minutes, and I do highly recommend that. What do we have next? We have an archival Bruno Mattei interview. This one's 2 minutes, rather short, but he gives his brief thoughts on Women's Prison Massacre. We also get Brawl in Women's Block. This is a 29-minute interview with writers and co-director Claudio Fragasso and Rosella Drudy. If you haven't seen this before, this is a really good piece. They talk about how they met, their first film together, Pisagi, in 1977. And Rosella Drudy has some good stories about having to pretend to be a boy when she was young and submitting some of her stories to Italian comics at the time. And this is a really cool interview just at their house. Their cat keeps interrupting the interview. It's pretty funny. They talk a little bit about their collaborations with Bruno Mattei. They talk about The Other Hell, true story of the Nun of Monza, and of course the infamous Hell of the Living Dead, and how they had to use stock footage from a documentary on New Guinea to match in that movie. Which that movie's a lot of fun too.
It is a lot of fun, yeah.
And it's a good informational piece because they also talk about how they didn't get their proper credits on different movies and some of the pseudonyms that they used. Great interview. I highly recommend you go out of your way to watch it. It just runs just almost 30 minutes. We also get 2 for 1, an interview with producer Roberto Di Girolamo that runs 12 minutes, and he talks a little bit about the French connection with these films and how they kind of had to cut these different deals where one movie would kind of be marketed more as a French women in prison film versus the other one. If you're interested in the business side of things of the time, I think it's a really good piece. And what else do we have? All right, I think actually the best of the extra features, aside from the commentary, that absolutely watch. Franca Stoppi, Matron of Hell. It's a video essay written and narrated by film critic Rachel Nisbet, and it runs 17 minutes, and it packs in a lot of information on Franca Stoppi, who's not a household name unless you're really into these films, but she really was quite amazing. And they talk about her early modeling and theater work, and her film debut. She's one of those actresses that kind of started in some big stuff and then moved on to exploitation. She actually married Burial Ground actor Simone Mattioli and founded a theater company.
Wow.
Yeah, and they kind of did that theater in between all of these grimy exploitation films. And they talk about Beyond the Darkness, which really is probably her best known work in the horror genre, as Iris. She is just amazing in that movie. We'll have to cover it.
She really is, yes.
Yeah, we'll have to do Beyond the Darkness sometime. That's such a good movie. And they talk a little bit about some of the other stuff she did. She did a sex comedy called The Gorilla. And yes, that's definitely another must. And kind of her retirement and kind of leaving theater in the 90s. And she's a very nice lady. She worked up until her passing doing animal charity work, specifically focusing on stray cats in Rome. So very nice lady, and this is a good highlight of the person and the career. So check that out. 17 minutes, well worth it if you're a fan of her work. So yes, another one in the books. I believe Black Cobra is on the next disc.
I believe so.
Excellent. This is going to be a lot of fun. Yeah.
No more gap weeks. We'll start banging them out again now that the October month is over.
Yes,
So,
the October rush.
What's left after Black Cobra? How many more are left?
Actually, that's something we got to figure out, because I know there's some discs that are kind of like we're going to combine because they're more extra type stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, after the next one, we're kind of going to have to map it out a little better.
Yeah, you have a feature length documentary as well on there on Joe D'Amato. So yeah. A lot of good stuff still to come.
Yes, definitely.
Right. Well, I really enjoyed it again tonight, guys. I'll talk to you again soon, all right?
Absolutely, Max. Great having you. You have a good one. So yes, guys, be sure to tune in for sorry we couldn't get like all of these out immediately, but when you look at these extras, it's like, oh man, there's no way I can't do this in a week.
And you throw Halloween right in the middle of it.
Yes. Although we did pretty good. We were able to get.
Well, we're taping /tober too. It was a busy month. So this we have a couple gap weeks on this, but
October
we're back.
October, aside from like all of the Halloween stuff, it's like a blur of just just like movies and you're decorating and everything.
I watched two Halloween movies this year, but that's another story. We should get out of here. And
Absolutely. So guys, patreon.com/fleshwoundfeatures. It all starts at just $1, and we appreciate you helping us out. We give you a lot on there, a lot of cool uncensored behind the scenes stuff and exclusives as well. We got for you After Dark fans some cool stuff coming up, I think, shortly, so you want to check that out. And on that note, Discord, that is free. You should join it. You'll never miss out on there's a lot of foodie stuff in there. You'll never miss out on a sale or anything about new movies, trailers, lots of cool stuff. Other podcasters in there too that you can chat with. So on that note, good night for now.
good evening.